Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Look.
Here.
Commissioner West.
Here.
Commissioner Schulte.
Here.
Commissioner Meisner.
Commissioner Meisner, can you hear us via WebEx?
Apologies, here.
Commissioner Gamache.
Here.
Commissioner Reiner.
Here.
Excellent. We are all present and accounted for except for Commissioner Brasted. And we will move on to item 4. Consider accepting the regular claims paid over $500 and purchase card claims paid for the period ending February 12th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Look. Is there a second? I'll second it.
Oh, I said second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
The sirens were going off.
Okay. I have a second by Commissioner West. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Reiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
That item passes. Next, we'll look for approval of 2 sets of minutes from February 9th, 2021, the regular county board meeting, and February 9th, 2021, the special county board meeting. Is there a motion to approve 5A and B?
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Gamache,
Second.
second by Commissioner West to approve both sets of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes as presented? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one's opposed. The minutes are passed. I have no chair's remarks for you today, so we're going to move right into committee reports. And if you would grab your additional board agenda, we will start with the Management Committee report. Commissioner West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is restructure and replacement in county administration effective March 13th. It is going from 1 FTE Economic Development Specialist grade C013 to a 1 FTE Economic Development Director grade D016. And the reason for this change is that we have recently lost our very effective economic development specialist, and during the tenure of her time here, we have, along with her performance, recognized that we needed to have a higher level that with more skill, more opportunity to just dive in deep with what an economic development director does. So I will move it.
There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gamache. Further discussion? Commissioner Look.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Couple of things here. First of all, I recall when we put together this position that we were kind of looking at it as a trial basis to figure out impact of this position, need of this position, productivity that could be achieved from this position. And I think that the former individual did a fine job. But I would like to see a report of kind of the gains and successes, the returns on investment, if you will, of what this position has created, especially in light of the fact that we want to increase it now to a bigger position. So that's one thing. But the second more important thing is I would like to actually put on hold these A and B from the standpoint that prior we spoke, I believe we had consensus that a prior model for bringing in new positions and that sort of thing kind of created a problem at budget time. That at budget time, we found that when you were adding positions halfway through the year, all of a sudden, you're starting at an increase without even changing anything the next year because of the tails that were associated with this. So we determined that it might be more productive, more better management maybe to bring these new position requests at the time of budget time. So then we can determine as a group, do we want to increase our budget for these new budget requests? And I see this item A as somewhat removing the specialist position, coming up with a director position. Then item B, which we'll be getting to, is non-budgeted new positions. And I'm not sure, but we haven't really set a budget time yet to discuss what our future budgets are going to be. So rather than slipping back into kind of the old way of doing things, I think that we kind of charted a course for a new, better way of doing things. And I would argue against, I guess, these two requests at this point, because I think it is a slipping back into the way we used to do things.
Commissioner Look, thank you. I will turn to Administrator Silveraja first and then Commissioner Reiner next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the County Board, the first position is a restructure and replacement. And so with any position that we have, we continually look at what the organizational needs are, and through the ER department, reevaluate based on the actual job duties, what classification that position should be. This particular position was established, I think, basically, here's the amount of money we have, it's a new position, we really don't know what the position will be. This position has certainly expanded the work that has been done over time, and I don't think when we started out we really knew exactly what this position would look like. It also has a great deal of autonomy as well. There are a lot of other skills and requirements built into the position. So when the ER department looked at evaluating the position based on the skills and the job duties, if you left it at what it was, it's really a false representation of what the position is. And so that means you would never increase or reevaluate any position that you had. So that is really what it is. It's really reflective of the work that is being done in that position.
Thank you, Administrator Silveraja. Commissioner Reiner?
Oh, and I'm so sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could speak after Commissioner Reinhardt, please.
Indeed. Thank you. Commissioner Reinhardt first, then Commissioner Meisner.
So we just had our management committee meeting, and we did have the benefit of presentation, and I guess that I would just request if we can duplicate that presentation for the benefit of the rest of the board. Reasons that were given for the additional positions.
Okay, before I go to Commissioner Meisner, I will state that we're going to address item 1A first.
Okay.
And not get into B and C just yet. So we are dealing specifically with the restructure and replacement of a position, the Economic Development Specialist to the Economic Development Director.
Fair enough.
And Administrator Silveraja had given us that presentation at the Management Committee meeting. And as soon as Commissioner Meisner asks her question or response, we'll turn back to Administrator Silveraja to see if she has anything else to add. Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and this position, if I recall correctly, was actually developed first because of the partnership with North Metro Chamber, and I want to say Connexus Energy that did that study. And so this was essentially, like Commissioner Look was saying, a contingent position. Okay, there's a need. Let's see how that goes. I think that Jaquel had this position for a total of 3 years. And I want to say at some point the funding even went from kind of this contingent understanding to, yep, this is going to be a permanent position. So just kind of stating the history of the actual position. And then to Commissioner Look's comments too about measurable aspects, I will say that I think a position like this is actually pretty hard to have concrete measurable measurements and unless there's enough time. And so even for 3 years, it hasn't been a lot of time, but I would say towards this end, we are actually seeing some real goals here, which means like people are coming to Anoka County. It's being looked at in terms of where to move their businesses. My question actually, though, is I personally think that it is a good move to put this under a position of as a director, just because I've seen, you know, the variety of work and scope of this. So my question though is, so until Jaquel resigned, had we ever looked at bumping this up to the level of director prior to that? It's simply because she resigned that we're kind of saying, yep, this work actually needs a different title and different pay level? That's my question.
Commissioner Meisner, as Administrator Silveraja recently stated, we're looking at every proposed vacancy, retirement, resignation, whatever it may be. We're reevaluating every position when that comes open as to, is it categorized properly? Should it be modified? Should it be changed? And this is one that we took the opportunity to look at the work that had been done in that position and see what classification it actually fell under. But I will turn back to Administrator Silveraja now. She can finish the presentation for the rest of the board, for those of us that saw it on management, and then we can continue the conversation. Administrator Silveraja.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the county board. So Commissioner Meisner, we had not looked at the position, and frankly, it is a position that we probably should have looked at even prior to this vacancy occurring. We do look at positions throughout the county. So many times in management committee, you will see the kind of the restructure of positions through management committee. There are some that are on a consent agenda that maybe are, again, if we had done this as with the current person in it, it would have come as part of the consent agenda on the management committee for basically a reclass rather than a full restructure.
Thank you. Commissioner Look.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, thank you. Again, we can reclassify positions, not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. The position may be doing more things than we initially thought it was going to do. Not a problem with that either. The issue is that of budget ramifications and timing. When do we bring these positions forward in terms of how they impact the budget? And do we say, well, it's just kind of part of this budget this year, but it's going to have tails next year. So next year we need to increase the levy just to account for the increase we made this year. That is the issue that we talked about before. That is the issue that we had consensus on before. And that is the issue that I'm raising today. I don't necessarily want to get into the weeds of Commissioner Meisner. Should this be a director position? Should it not be a director position? What additional things have they done? That's irrelevant right now. The issue that I raised was budget ramifications.
I understand your point, Commissioner Look, but as positions come vacant throughout the year, it makes good business sense to reevaluate at that point before you refill that position. And that's where we're at here. I mean, it would be wonderful if all of our positions vacated right at budget time and people resigned or retired right at budget time so we could make these decisions. But I was fully on board with your recommendation last year that we make as many position adjustments as we can at budget time. So we know what the budget's going to be, we know what the tails are, we know what we need to do for a levy. But in the meantime is the reality of everyday happenstance in employee relations. When people resign, when people retire, when people move on, and we need to refill that position. Maybe they've been there 10 years, maybe they've been there 5, maybe 25, and we need to reclass that position. We need to hire somebody. We need to have somebody there to do the work, and we can't always hire at the exact classification that was there. We need to modify it. I understand this change, and I believe it's the right thing to do. I also understand your hesitancy because it's not all at one time at budget time.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Reinert, then Commissioner West,
And Mr. Chair,
and then Commissioner Meisner.
Yeah, so I just want to bring up, so what would the ramification be if we, throughout the year, going with, I guess, what the board agreed with prior, in situations where there is a reevaluation of the position, wait until budget time. So we have a vacancy right now, it needs to be filled. What would be the ramification if we filled that position? That person that then we hire, we tell that new person, this is, by the way, a position that's going to be reevaluated at the end of the year and could be moved from a specialist to a director position. You know, that's more incentive, I guess, for that person to come on board. You know, what would be the ramifications of dealing with these things and sticking with, I guess, what the board had discussed prior?
I wish I could answer that. I think it becomes a little bit cloudy in that you may not get the applicants you want if you are putting out a job posting for a specialist as opposed to a director. you may miss that top tier of candidates who say, I'm not going to apply if it's not a director position at $5 more per hour. You may lose those top tier candidates. And if you're really going to reclass the position at budget time, I mean, it's half a year or 7 months, or I don't know. It's a good question, but I think as far as muddying the waters a little bit by suggesting it may be a directorship in 6 months. Commissioner West and Commissioner Meisner.
You stated it better than I could. That's exactly what I was going to talk about, is we want to get the best candidate we can for the needs we have for the position. So this is a time, because of what you said earlier, is that we don't control when people come and go.
Thank you. Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just follow-up commentary. I'm not on the management committee, but to what Administrator Sivaraja was commenting on, that, you know, maybe positions like this, especially when there's only one person that is responsible for this task, I would like to see, reevaluations happening before a resignation, before necessarily retirement. I think that's really important then to retain and to, you know, make sure that we're making sure that the position is being paid for what it's worth. And then, as far as I echo Commissioner West and then your own comments as well. While I definitely agree that we should try to have a goal of being efficient with, you know, budgetary tails, it's almost impossible as an employer to do it once a year if we really want to retain and attract talent in our county.
Thank you. Commissioner Look.
So, Mr. Chair, based on our prior conversations and the board's kind of consensus as it relates to budget ramifications, you might say that restructurings don't fit within that category. At least that's what I'm understanding here today, but new positions do. Is that correct?
I would think that's a fair statement.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? We do have a motion and a Commissioner Gamache.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The position that we're looking at currently, the Economic Development Specialist to become a director position, that was posted for, correct?
Mr.
Administrator Sivaraja.
Chairman, members of the County Board, Commissioner Gamache, it has been posted, but it is pending approval.
Okay. I understand that, Mr. Chair, I understand that we've are looking at it because of the opening, but are we also looking at it because we are finding anything or on what we are receiving from those posts that we thought, okay, we're not getting what we expect?
Administrator Sivaraja.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gamache, so actually, based on the actual work that is required of this position, that is what determines what the grade level should be. Nothing outside of that. It really is the work that's required and the skills that are required for the position.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, just a last question, or not a question, more of a comment, I guess. I think we're very fortunate that we had Jaquel. She became, as my good friend Pete Turok always says, a superstar for us, or a rock star, as Pete would say, and did a fantastic job. So, yeah, we're trying to fill her shoes, which might be bigger than what we had first anticipated. So I'm supportive of this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gamache. This position became more of a relationship development manager. And Jaquel did a fabulous job for us. Those will be big shoes to fill, but we intend to do just that and continue on with developing these strong relationships we've built with the communities in Anoka County, which are critical for economic development. To have that synergy between municipalities and the county level as we move forward is imperative. It's what we need, and so we'll find that right person. Any further discussion? I will comment, too, that this will not be, although the county pays the paycheck for this, and the actual interview panel will be made up of members of the Anoka County Regional Economic Development Group. So it will be the municipalities that will help select our next development director. Are there any further comments? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Opposed.
And that item passes. Next, item B.
Next two items is one FTE HR, that's Human Resources Management System is what that acronym is. Business Analyst, grade 12, a Business Analyst, grade 13, and a Master Data Analyst 4, grade 14. And then the other positions are one FTE Employee Relations Consultant 1, grade 12. I mean, it's two 1 FTE positions.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gamache. And I think we should have, per Commissioner Reinert's request, I think we should have a presentation from Steph Beito-Zimmer from our Employee Relations Division on these particular positions. Steph, welcome.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good morning. I'm Steph Beito-Zimmer. I'm the Director of Employee Relations. Before you today, you have two board action items, and I'll provide some information to serve as a foundation for some of the details that you have in front of you. 18 months ago, I came into the Director of Employee Relations role on an interim basis, and a few months later was appointed in regular status to the role. I talked about at that time the need to really evaluate the work within employee relations and also additional human resources work being done throughout various county divisions and departments. We have spent time bringing much of that work into the department to centralize it. We have focused on process improvement and gaining efficiencies and overhaul and transforming that work. We have looked at the volume overall. We have spent time evaluating better ways to do that work, and all of that with a short-term focus. We have also had an eye towards the future and a much longer-term strategy regarding a human resources management system to better manage the data for 2,000 employees and 1,000 retirees. That's a longer-term strategy. Since then, we have had COVID emerge, and much of that work has intersected with the Employee Relations Department, be it leaves of absence, performance management, helping managers manage their remote workforce, and more. Much of the work that we do is driven by federal and state law mandates, if you will. It is time sensitive. We have requirements that we need to follow to be timely. And we also partner with finance, for example, on audits, OPEB reporting, state auditors that are here to evaluate work and more. So volume in the department has been very high. I have looked at a number of factors to really analyze what's happening with the work in the department, starting with the volume. Is it because we've taken more work into the department, and is that going to subside? When we have process improvement and gain efficiencies within the department, is that going to help because we'll be doing things in a better, more efficient manner so that we will have more work being done more quickly? We've had our own leaves of absence within the team, so individuals who are out. Has that been contributing to the workload? COVID has come online. Is that short-term? Is that long-term? How long is the tail, and how long will we see the effects of that? The drive towards a long-term strategy in an HRMS system. How will that impact our work both today, because we manage all of that data and work today, we just do it through very inefficient manners, and tomorrow through what we hope will be an HRMS system. In evaluating each of those things, it would have been short-sighted to be in front of you prior to this with any one of those things being the driving factor, because I could not look at you and say, indeed, I've analyzed it thoroughly and fully and know that this ask in front of you is correct. I can stand here today because I've done the analysis in each of these areas in partnership with administration, IT, finance, and within our own employee relations function. I've also looked at what could be postponed or delayed. Are there things we're doing that we should stop doing? We should negotiate with other county departments and divisions to say, could we delay this, put it off, do it down the road at a later time? What can we pace or adjust? Unfortunately, the nature of our work doesn't really allow for that. Leaves of absence, they occur on average in the hundreds at the county. They have to be managed. We manage all three layers. The employee, the information they're submitting and the steps they need to take, the manager of that employee and how they need to manage that employee and tend to their business needs and strategies they have for getting that work done, and also the county perspective. So how we look out for the needs of the county and make sure that we are following all appropriate laws and regulations. We have performance management that occurs and is unpredictable. We have recruitment efforts and new ways of doing that, particularly in light of the pandemic. We have public data requests that our department is responsible for fulfilling and have guidelines around what to provide and in what sort of time manner those need to be completed. We have COVID legislation that gets passed very quickly, and we need to translate into FAQs and work in partnership with the attorney's office to put that information out very quickly to managers and supervisors. We have those employee data requests. We have timesheets and payroll approvals to make sure that the 2,000 employees get paid on time. We have open enrollment that needs to occur. We have labor contract negotiations. The list goes on, and my point is that we don't have an ability to really adjust up or down pace or decline some of this work. So in evaluating the needs of the department, the two board action items really articulate two parts of the employee relations department. One is in this HRMS space, where today, in order to get the work done, two of the leaders of that HRMS function have been putting in additional hours, a lot of additional hours, to see that that work gets done. Work has also been spread across the team to make sure that that gets done. My point when I talk about a long-term strategy regarding an HRMS system is that that is the most efficient way to manage county data and to have all employees, managers, retirees accessing that data, and for employee relations and other departments to manage their parts of it. But all of that work is being done today and needs to be tended to. So two leaders within HRMS, along with other team members, are investing their time to do that work. On the other side of the house, as I talk about the support that we give to county divisions and departments through our account teams and our subject matter experts of the consultants, we are short-staffed. And so myself and others are working up to 70 hours sustained on average, week in and week out, to make sure that that work gets done. Many of us have had roles like the others on the team perform, so we have that skill set and can jump in and do that work. Our professionals are certified, so they know what they're doing. They are, they have the hallmark and that certification that indicates that they are well-versed in what they do and they know the most efficient ways to get it done, and yet we can't keep up. And so in looking at the options, I really have exhausted all options, and there isn't another path forward other than burning these team members out and having them depart. And then I'm in a recruitment cycle of having to recruit these individuals for roles and starting over with the training and onboarding, and then we're even farther behind what we are. So I have worked with administration and finance to really look at, to your point, Commissioner Look, about the financial pathway and the need and desire to want to do this during a budget process, to explore how that might be possible. And we considered a number of options because we have a budget reset process that you're all well aware of that's starting out. And as we embark on that, there will be some opportunities of positions maybe available that aren't going to need to be filled, many of them funded, that this almost could be a transfer into the department. So we looked at, do we go that route of bringing this forward, saying, we've identified some positions already, perhaps we could use those and just transfer them over to employee relations to deploy them. But it's early in that process. And while we have a vacant position report that just came out that showcases the county has 165 vacant positions, we could have had conversations with departments and divisions to analyze those, but we want the budget reset process to unfold, to do that in total for the county. But we do anticipate some will emerge, and those could be earmarked and essentially backfill for what the request is today. So today the optics of this look like an ask for 5 positions. That's a very big ask. But if you look at the process by which we're describing following through what is today using carry forward funds to establish these, begin the recruitment process, which isn't immediate, which takes time, and then using the budget reset process to identify potential savings, other positions that essentially backfill for what this is. That is the course that we have asked for in the budget request. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Are there questions for Steph? Commissioner Gamache.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Steph. This is some great detail of the entire ask. Quick question. You mentioned in your comments that when you first came on and you were analyzing everything in ER, and I always have a hard problem with ER, in ER and in other areas of what was being done throughout the county, that you brought things back in so that we could have it all in one area, so that makes sense. And my question then would be, did that require us to move any budget dollars from other departments because we took things away from that department and that we could move to ER, and did we already do that? I'm just kind of curious how that might have worked.
There were no specific shifts identified of dollars coming from other departments or divisions, like we've earmarked X dollars that would come from X division into employee relations or FTEs. I will say that we have supplemented with temporary staff along the way, but that funding stream or the approval to do so didn't have anything to do with coming from other departments or divisions.
Okay. To follow up? Thank
Commissioner
you.
Gamache.
So when we moved some of it, let's say, I'm just going to pick, it was in admin, let's say, and we moved something from admin over to ER. Was there less work done at admin then, or I'm not exactly sure why the shift was made. I mean, the shift was made because we felt it should be an ER. But what happened to the person that was doing that work in admin, let's say?
So today throughout the county, we have what we refer to as HR Liaison. So these are individuals that they have various titles, they are in different grades, roles, and pieces of their jobs have included supporting employee relations work. So these small pieces of each of those individuals then came back into employee relations. So for employee relations in total, the aggregate, that's a lot. For each of these individuals, it probably freed up some of their capacity, which I'm sure within the departments and divisions they've deployed to better serving, the services they provide to citizens and different things. But they are slices from each of those individuals. So within the departments, divisions, it's not that it freed up a whole FTE that necessarily came into ER. It's slices, but for us, it's the total that we're absorbing.
Okay, thank you.
For those of you on the management committee, I apologize, but I'm going to repeat what I said earlier this morning at management for the benefit of everybody else. Steph's division, employee relations, has gone through some tough times. We've had at least 6 years, maybe more, of some tumult within that division, brought about a lot by just not enough staffing. And I think the advent of this HRMS, the management system, I think is going to help a lot, but we've got to get there first. We have people that are literally working nights and weekends and putting in a lot of extra hours and getting to the level of burnout where we may lose them. And that's unacceptable because that puts us on that spiral, as Steph so eloquently stated, of having to onboard and retrain and recertify, and then you're going through that whole process, and then you're still shorthanded because you're just replacing people that left. This is one area where I've thought the county has been weak. I think we've been weak in our human resources or employee relations. And I think this is our chance to get back to where we need to be. I supported this in management, and I'll support it again now. And I know it's coming in a middle of the year spot, not at budget time. But we are about to embark on a brand new budget process, which is going to change everything we do and how we do it, which will be long and arduous and frankly a little bit fun to watch from the outside, because staff will be doing all the heavy lifting and we will be standing back, keeping an eye on it, and then at the end rubber stamping it or saying go back to the drawing board. But in the meantime, we can't stop working. We can't stop the daily operations of Anoka County. And to me, this is where we have to, in this particular case, move forward with these 5 positions. Commissioner Look, then Commissioner West,
And Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Meisner was first.
and then Commissioner Meisner.
I think
Thank you.
Commissioner Meisner was first.
Okay, Commissioner Meisner, we're going to have you go next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Steph, for that presentation. I think it's just a really good example of, now, while these were very specific to Employee Relations Department, the timing and having the right people in the positions, everything that you talked about, this happens throughout all departments, which is why it's such a tricky thing of what the bigger discussion is about what's the budgetary process and what is the timing to either reevaluate or fill these positions. So again, I will be supporting this, but again, my comment is basically just to illustrate what is happening throughout all departments in the county, unless we're able to be proactive about retention and attracting talent in here.
Thank you, Commissioner Meisner. We'll go to Commissioner Look and then Commissioner West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I looking at the numbers here right? Is about $600,000 essentially for budget ramifications? Add the
Yeah,
two together?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes, it is estimated costs as articulated in the items. We're talking 75% of the current year, so $137,000 on the one for the current year, and the other, 294, and Finance has
So-
provided those figures.
Right, so we had leftover money essentially in retirements or vacancies or whatever the case is, and we're using those dollars to try and offset this year, but then next year we're going to have the impact. And the dollar impact is what I'm trying to get at. Is that the 600 some rough $1,000 that we're gonna have to, when we start budgeting, we're gonna have to say, we're not at zero budget, we're at plus 600 and we'll go from there. Is that about accurate?
It is accurate, but also know that there are current funded positions that may not be used in those other departments' divisions. Some of them already identified and more likely to come that could be transferred over to offset. But yes, you are correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I guess from that standpoint, I don't necessarily like budgeting for positions that may or may not be here and hoping and wishing that we'll have those funds. But Mr. Chair, you indicated middle of the year. It's not middle of the year. It's 2 months in of a new budget. And we have the sheriff sitting in the audience here this morning, and I know we roll in pretty heavy on the sheriff when he asks for positions. And these are 5 positions now being requested. And I feel sorry for you, Mr. Sheriff, because it's like you're asking for, people putting themselves in harm's way, and we roll in heavy on that, but now we're looking at possibly approving 5 positions of people that don't necessarily put themselves in harm's way. I'm not trying to compare positions, but I'm trying to compare how we try and limit growth of positions within this government. Because we know that increasing positions when 80% of your budget is staffing is the primary driver of your budget. And it's the primary driver of the levy, and it's the primary driver of how much people are gonna end up having to pay in addition to what they paid last year. So keeping a lid on that maybe is kind of my hope and wish and goal in life, maybe, you might say. Now, prior to Steph, I don't recall employee relations having these, long weekends, over hours, stressed, we're gonna lose it type of scenario. And then I'm understanding, as Commissioner Gamache indicated, that there's kind of been some restructuring, some changes, and maybe some pile-on into employee relations, which I would ask, if it wasn't broken before, why did we change it to now a stressful, more problematic situation where we need to add 5 more people? And I appreciate Commissioner Gamache's point that if someone else was doing it and now they're not doing it, wait a minute. How are we now attributing more work to that person or trying to come even on this thing? So we just talked about how restructure and replacement doesn't necessarily fall in the discussion that we had of budget ramification, and then new positions do fall in that category. And so I will go back to my original request, and that is that B and C be delayed until we can have our budget discussions on this, and see, in fact, what our other ramifications are going to be in the budget, and do we in fact have the capacity to add 5 more positions, and ask the people, taxpayers, to cough that up.
Thank you, Commissioner Look. Commissioner West. Then
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Chair, sorry.
Meisner. Then Commissioner Meisner.
It was broken before. That's why Steph is leading the department now. We did not do many of the responsibilities that a human resources department should do. I'm using that term for other people to remember what we're talking about. And this was not done willy-nilly. Since she came here, she's been working on fixing the process and how we do it. And it's not like it's our choice, as she stated early on.
Thank you, Commissioner West. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Good topic for discussion this morning, actually. So this department, as I understand, and it doesn't sound like anyone opposes the comments that this department has needed some help for, 5, 6 years or better. And I don't hear anyone, I guess, against the comments that these positions would be needed based on the current position they're in. Blame it on COVID or whatever you want. But we do have a situation where there is a need, We are facing burnout from, what I understand. And so it'd be irresponsible for us to not take care of that need. But what I see is going on here is that there's a process issue in that it has been discussed in how we're going to be adding positions. This goes against what everyone has agreed to. And what I see, though, is that this is probably going to be a problem every year, because we can talk about all the positions that we need at the time when we're discussing budget, and then we're going to get into the need, and then something's going to happen, and there's going to be a need, and it's going to be, once again, irresponsible for us not to take care of that need. But we have to be responsible with the budget and maybe just come up with a different way of doing it, and it's back to process. So I would throw out an idea that might, because what I'm hearing is the problem too, and I agree with this, tails. So we have a budget, we get into the year, we have unforeseen need, we have to take care of that need, it costs us money, and then we have tails into the next year that we have to deal with the following year when we're discussing the budget. I don't know what we have in the budget for 2021 for contingency. I suppose we could take some of those dollars that we have in contingency and use those dollars for this. I did hear also, though, that we have currently 165 vacant positions with the county, which every single day is saving us dollars. But maybe we can use those saved dollars there. But going forward and having some kind of comprehensive plan, and I would just throw this out an idea not to agree to today, but maybe to consider, and that would be to have an employee contingency dollar amount that you start the year with, knowing that there's going to be this conversation sometime throughout the year where there's going to be a need. I mean, it happens every single year, and I'm sure, I haven't been here that long, but I'm sure that this conversation happens every year. But if you start the year with an employee contingency dollar amount to take care of those possibly needed positions that are unforeseen, now you can talk about those dollars in the current budget year that you're approving. If you use those dollars, fine. If you don't use those dollars, it's money left over, and that's a good thing. But if you do use those dollars, you're not the next year then trying to figure out how to pay for positions because you've already taken care of that financial amount in the current year. I don't know if everyone's following the math on that, but it is math that works. And it does erase tails going forward past the point of those unforeseen positions. Now, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about adding 5 positions, but I'm just, I'm a problem solver. That is one thing to consider that would actually erase tails after unforeseen need and having to fill it and spending dollars that you didn't want to at the beginning of the year. So I just wanted to throw that out as an idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Reinert. Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with the Commissioner Reinhardt 100%. This is going to be a problem that we have every year. Having tails is the nature of our work, and I also think that the questions that I ask overall, it goes beyond just budgetary. Yes, that should be a factor, absolutely. But the question is too, right now we're talking about $600,000 ask here with these five positions. But the question on the flip side is, what is it going to cost if we don't do this? Because there's a cost for inaction or less efficiency with it as well. And then to Commissioner Look's earlier comment too, I would also just say my argument is that growth should not be dictated strictly by budgetary reasons. Growth is dictated by demand. And our number one job is to serve our community. And so as our community grows, as our staff grows, that's what's dictated by growth is the demand and not necessarily just the dollar amount. Thank you.
Thank you. I will comment that in my early years on the county board, we were seeing 25 or 30 positions per year coming forward throughout the year, just regularly at management committee meetings and board meetings. And Commissioner Look's idea of consolidating all those into budget time made all the sense in the world to me. It does make sense. However, the reality is we're still going to have some, I'll use the term stragglers, but anomalies that come up throughout the year that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to make decisions. But we should still have that policy of, by and large, new positions, if they can be planned for, understood, and figured out, should come forward all at one time during budget process. I don't disagree with that process and policy at all. I think it's the right thing to do. But there are going to be anomalies. There are going to be cases where, like in this case, a division that has struggled for years. And the reason they've struggled is because they've been short-staffed, and we've put people into that division leadership in the past that were really trying to just heal the division a little bit, just trying to somehow put a Band-Aid on things without really digging in and doing the surgery and fixing it. And that's what we've done. We were exposed to probably a lot of legalities and making mistakes in that area that we shouldn't be making mistakes. And so we now have a division that's being very professionally run, but it's also very shorthanded. And my opinion is we can't risk burnout here. This is, to me, as important as a cop on the street. It's as important as a 911 dispatcher. It's not about public safety in this case. Employee relations is much more about fiscal consciousness, fiscal safety as we protect ourselves from lawsuits, both from employees and the public. And so for that reason, I'm going to support these 5 positions, 3 in item B and 2 in item C. Commissioner Gamache.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in going forward, I would expect, and Corey's here, I would expect that, and from the administrator as well, that we are going to be budgeting into the future to say we've got this now change in ER. Other departments, as Steph pointed out too, there's 165 vacant positions currently within the county. And so that is part of what we go to in the very first part of the step that you're looking at from the budget, is to say we have the $600,000 now that we're going to have to deal with. And that should be at the very top of their list of how they move forward. I do think that there might be some opportunities within some other departments still from some of the work that you did pull back and place into the right area. That needs to be looked at by those departments, that they need to understand what they are no longer doing, and that might make some savings for them. And finally, this is the thing that probably struck me the most, was the very first part of your background piece where you put in here that the Employee Relations Department does not currently have a technical analyst/business analyst within the function. That was a little amazing to me, and I did get a tip-off from Susan Breland before the meeting that was a fact, and I was kind of shocked that we don't have that within ER. So I know that that's part of what's happening and what you're doing and working with our IT department to get moving on that. That's vital. That's very, very important. It would not only speed up things for our employees, but should help a little bit with a workload as well down the line in the future of ER. So that would be good to get that moving along. But again, that's going to be a cost to the county because we're going to have the software and all the work that goes into putting it into place. But it's an understandable one that we don't want a staff working in the year 2021 with a system that was maybe built in 2000 or 1990 something. So we need to move forward on that as well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second before us. We have more comments from Commissioner Look.
Thank you, Mr.
Turn to
Chair.
him now.
Yeah, I guess I would hate to be the prior ER director right now, kind of watching this and seeing that their work was being spoken ill of. But the changes that occurred, the need for 5 more people, I'm not sure were the correct changes. There's probably a lot more analysis that probably needs to be done on that. But I will tell you, in my 14, 15 years of public service, I have never met a department that doesn't need more staff. Never. They will always ask for more staff. For whatever reason, any reason or no reason, always ask for more staff. So that will remain a constant, I think, in terms of government. But let me just say this, that we charted a course. See, we had this prior as well. We had it in terms of bonding. We had people bonding throughout the year, and we put an end to that. We said we're going to either stop bonding or we're going to control this by putting in different accounts so that you don't have to bond every single time. We've tried to control that. We've tried to control the ask of employees coming forward every single board meeting and management committee. And this is kind of a deviation from that. So let me just for myself be clear that I'm going to oppose any mid-year ask for staff that doesn't come before a budget request where we can have a comprehensive discussion on where are we at with our budget, what are our priorities, and does this fit? And if we start saying, yeah, but you know, this is a necessity, and well, that's a necessity, and well, we could justify that as a necessity as too. It's a camel's nose under the tent. And pretty soon the whole camel's inside the tent. And I'm just not gonna go back into that type of scenario, personally speaking. So that's all I'm gonna say on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Look. I think we understand your position. Commissioner Reinert.
You know, I don't disagree with your position, Commissioner Look. Actually, it makes a lot of sense. The board, obviously, prior to me being here, has discussed this and doesn't like having mid-year additions of new positions. I guess, would you entertain what I had suggested? I just asked some kind of contingency dollars that are set aside for this, because need is going to happen throughout the year. Need is going to happen. It's just, it's inevitable. And to avoid or ignore that's going to happen, it's just something we have to deal with in some way, shape, or form. And just to say we're not going to address it, I don't think it's the right way to go about it. And I just threw out an idea that, would address it. And, that then we're setting dollars aside that are dedicated, designated towards that purpose. And it is in the budget. And then the next year there are not tails. Is that something you'd entertain?
Commissioner
And it's fine if you want to think about it and don't want to commit today, but I mean, it's at least a suggestion of how to deal with this real issue.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Reinert, I think that already exists right now in terms of the carry forward fund that's been established. I don't know that we've approved this as a board for a carry forward fund, but essentially when people resign, retire, leave, whatever the case is, the budget amount that would have paid for their salary goes into this fund now that finance kind of controls. And then what happens is before we get brought before our committees, hey, do we want to add these new positions? People go to the finance department and say, hey, how much money do you have? And can we get can we get some of that money for these positions and fund these positions? I think that kind of already exists informally, perhaps. That would be a good question for this board. Do we want a carry forward fund type of scenario, or do budget vacancies go towards next year's levy reductions?
Commissioner Reinert.
So I like that idea, actually, and what I guess I would request is that anytime there is a midterm request for additional positions, that the finances of that fund also be presented to see whether or not the new dollars that are going to be spent. I think Commissioner Look said it was going to be somewhere around $600,000 for this request, whether it makes sense budget-wise and for how it relates to that fund. Because that fund in existence, then up against this request, obviously then we'd be able to afford it, right?
Well, let me lasso the conversation and bring it back in here, only because this is a productive conversation, but as you stated, Commissioner Reiner, really for another day. It's a different conversation. It is a budgetary conversation, one that we need to have as part of our new budgeting process. Do we have that carry forward line item? Do we not? Do we have a excess personnel line item? I mean, whatever it is, we need to work on that. We need to understand that better, and we'll work with Corey and Administrator Silveraja to do just that. There is currently, as Commissioner Look stated, a line item somewhere where vacant positions are stored. And in fact, I'll turn to Administrator Silveraja to see if she can clarify that a little bit so we all understand it a little better. Right now, before we vote on these two items B and C.
Mr. Chairman, members of the county board, essentially, when there are vacancies that occur, there are dollars that are captured. That gets rolled over to the end of the year into carryover funds that essentially are utilized to either reduce the levy moving forward or for other needs that exist within the county. Corey, did you want to add something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Silveraja. My name is Corey Camp. I'm the Finance and Central Services Division Manager. We have a couple different approaches. If you look at the funding, obviously vacancy occurs within departments when, they have turnover during the year. Those vacancies will go through a carryover process that we do at the end of the year, which then we look and see how much money do we need to maintain our reserves at the reserve level that the board has talked about, because we have that reserve level, or do we move that money to some other places to meet other needs, whether it be funding an IT fund, a building fund, asset preservation fund. Those are all part of the discussion that we will be having. In addition, starting about 2 years ago, we started adding dollars built into the budget, and we have them in 21, which are anticipated positions that were budgeted to be new for the year, but we didn't know exactly how much we would need. So we would put a dollar amount, and those are contingencies that we have set up. So that contingency fund that Commissioner Reinert was talking about, we actually have dollars sitting in countywide where we use in this case. And that's why as you look at this funding, the $600,000 that's before you, for 21, as we look at 21, we may look back, because we're not to the carry forward point yet. That's coming in another month or two because we're going through the audit. Or we may dip into that contingency based on what the need is. So the dollars for 21 are available and are there. So that's number one. For 22, when we think of a budget reset, we're going through a whole new look at how we do things in the budget. And in order to try to maintain the strategic goals of what that is and kind of where we're heading with that, it's too early to say. Yes, this 600,000 says, okay, this is an increase here, but then where do we decrease? And part of this has been the strategic priority discussions that you've all been having over the last month. As we put the strategic priority in place, workforce being one of them, this would be saying, okay, we want to allocate towards our strategic priorities. Well, as part of the budget reset, then where are we making the adjustments to make that happen? Because then we're going to be talking later this year, what's the overall strategy and goal about how much are you comfortable with for a tax change? So the 600,000 doesn't necessarily mean a tax increase at the end of the day, but it could mean a priority shift. And so these are just discussions that will come forth, Think of it that way.
Thank you, Corey and Administrator Silveraja, for that. I think we do have a motion and a second before us, and for clarity's sake, it is for items 1B and C. That is the 3 1 FTEs, an HRMS business analyst, grade 12, 13, and data analyst 4, grade 14, and then the 2 1 FTE employee relations consultant 1, grade 12. And seeing no further discussion, we will have a roll call vote. Commissioner Schulte? Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look,
Opposed?
Commissioner West.
Aye.
And that item passes.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner West. We will now move on to the Transportation Chair Report. This is a chairman report from our committee. As we did not meet, we have 3 items for you, action items under the Highway Division. First, we'd like you to consider a resolution establishing the 2021 spring weight restrictions on the Anoka County Highway System. Is there an offer of the resolution?
I'll offer it.
The resolution's been offered by Commissioner Look. Any further discussion? Joe, anything to add for this, for conversation's sake?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the County Board. My name is Joe McPherson. I'm the Transportation Division Manager and County Engineer. The only thing I wanted to add here, Mr. Chair, is that each year we take a strategic look at our roadway system. And as you see on the screen here before you, there's different colors on the map. It represents the different tonnage and weight restrictions we have on our county road system. We try and look at it from multiple angles. One of those is we want to make sure that the industry and the commercial areas that exist throughout the county are served correctly. So you can see the red areas, which represent those 10-ton areas. Those are more of like our major corridors, such as Bunker Lake Boulevard, Hanson, Round Lake Boulevard, 7th Avenue. We want to assure that we're servicing those areas correctly. Then the areas that you see in gray and green, and there shouldn't be any blue anymore. If there's one or two left, we're working on trying to raise the capacity of those roadways. But essentially, we want to make sure that we're serving the communities correctly. And then after the spring load restriction is removed, they're back to the 10-ton status. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you, Joe. Commissioner Look.
Sure. Joe, what is 4th Avenue?
4th Avenue,
Is that a 7-ton, built to 7-ton?
good question. Let me take a look here. That one right now is showing 9-ton.
We just refinished that not too long ago. It's looking a little rough, so I'm not sure why, if the drainage or what the issue is on that, but, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Are there any further comments? Seeing none, the resolution is before us. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That item will pass. Secondly, the Transportation Committee would like you to approve a resolution of support for Linwood Township's Local Road Improvement Program, or LRIP, grant application for the Martin Lake Road Improvement Project. Is there an offer of that resolution?
I'd like to move that resolution.
There's an offer of the resolution by Commissioner Reinert. And Joe, can you walk us through this one?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. So essentially what this is this is the Local Road Improvement Program grant application solicitation. And this is really for those local roadway jurisdictions that need a little additional money to help deliver their roadway program. So areas like Linwood Township, Now Then, which is not a state aid city, which is actually our next item, they look for these pots of money to help fund their roadway program. So both of these are good projects. And essentially the county, by offering to sponsor these projects, will be the fiscal agent. The township and the following city will be responsible for preparing the plans, getting all that put together, as well as inspecting the project. And then any additional costs that are borne on the project that are not covered by the Local Road Improvement Program funds are the responsibility of the local agency. We're just simply there to assist them and make sure that they meet all the regulations that are required.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. Any further comments? There is a resolution before us. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That will pass unanimous. We will move on to item 3, where we'll consider approval of a resolution of support for the City of Now Then's LRIP grant agreement for the reconstruction of 185th Avenue and Jasper Street.
I'll offer it.
The resolution has been offered by Commissioner Look. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That will pass unanimously. And that does conclude our chair's report for the Transportation Committee. And now we will move on to the Human Services Committee chair report, and we'll turn to Commissioner Reinert.
All right, Mr. Chair. The Human Services Committee met on February 16th, and we have a few items for action for the board's consideration today. First item is economic assistance, and let's see. Is there any report on this one, or?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is, my name is Cindy Caesar, and I'm the Human Service Division Manager. No, there isn't. This is just routine economic assistance bills that we do need to have a vote on. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Commissioner Reinert. We have an action item under Public Health and Environmental Services, which is action item number 1. Did you want to go through that one?
On Human Services?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so this is to consider recommending the county board enter into contract renewal with OTI. And I believe Cindy has additional information on this one.
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Yes, we are requesting to amend our contract currently that we have with OTI. And they operate, of course, our Lino Lakes and Bunker Hills compost sites. We've had this contract in place since 2016. They do just a really nice job for us overall and for our citizens. The specifics of the contract is that annually we pay them $44,000 for, just maintenance, upkeep of the location. And then we also provide a subsidy per vehicle, which is $5 per vehicle. Our annual contract overall is about $400,000 per year. And we will start this contract on March 1st of 2021, which will go to February of 2023. So just asking permission to continue this wonderful contract that we have in place.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
Move it.
A motion by Commissioner Look. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Reinert. Further discussion. I'll turn to Commissioner Look first, then Commissioner Meisner.
Mr. Chair, just by way of background on this, the $5 subsidy per vehicle, I think, was borne by the vehicle itself at one point, but when Commissioner Kordiak was here, he had proposed that we absorb that as a county to try and encourage folks to help us try and meet our recycling goals by bringing more product there and that sort of thing. And so we now absorb that $5 per vehicle. I will say that personally, I've been out there, picked up garden soil or dropped off sod or whatever I'm working on, and their staff has been extremely helpful, very courteous, and I think run a pretty solid operation out there. And I'm very happy to support this morning.
Very good. Any further comments? Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and actually, I don't have any comments about this item. I just wanted to clarify that our Human Services Committee, so we did meet, but it was presented basically as all informational. I learned that in that meeting that unless there's one physical person at that committee, then we can't officially vote on it. So this is more of a chair's report that then we're all bringing to the full board. So just to clarify that, but I will be supporting this particular action item.
Thank you for the clarification. Is there any further comments?
Just, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Gamache.
just to get some clarification to make sure that I'm reading this right. So as Commissioner Look indicated that we had the $5 per vehicle, but we're now absorbing that $5 vehicle so that we can continue to have more people going and dropping off their leaves and grass and stuff. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, it was an effort, if I can expand, it was an effort to improve our recycling.
Yep.
To up our recycling, to reach that number that the legislature has mandated by, I believe, 2030. We have to be at 75% of all refuse derived in the county has to be recycled at that point.
Yep.
Only 25% can either wind up in a landfill or a burner. So to do that, we needed to up our organics game. Mm-hmm. And to do that, we thought if we made it easier and freer for the average person in Anoka County to get rid of their yard waste, that we would increase that percentage.
Absolutely.
I would be anxious to see what that number actually gets to. And as Commissioner Look and I always lamented when we went to Swim Club, Solid Waste Management Coordinating Board, that we couldn't understand the difference between having yard waste composting in your yard or whether it's centrally collected at a facility in the middle of the county. It didn't make sense to us then and still doesn't make sense to me now. But I will turn to Commissioner Look for more comments.
Mr. Chair, I compost a lot when I cut my grass anyways. Now, Cindy, just a clarification. You had said that the contract was modified or was going to be modified in rate or something, but it's just really the timing of the contract, so renewing it?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, look, that is accurate. We've had this contract extended prior, and so we're just continuing the contract and just indicating the amount, because that has gone up over time, essentially because we did absorb that $5 per vehicle, and it's being highly used, which is exactly what we want.
Sure, thank you.
Are there any further comments? Seeing none, there is a motion and a second before us, and this will require a roll call vote.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye. That item passes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is authorization to apply for and accept Second Chance Act, addressing the needs of incarcerated parents. And we don't have Janelle with us, but we do have Cindy Caesar for additional presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Our Public Health Department, basically, we are really excited about the opportunity to be able to apply for this grant, and we also want authorization to accept it if that happens. This is a second chance grant with the Department of Justice. And basically what it focuses on is working with incarcerated parents and their minor children. Our prevention outreach coordinator, which is in our public health department, has been working with our Lino Lakes prison staff, as well as with the Minnesota Doula Project. They would like to focus the efforts on fathers and visitation with their children and trying to enhance that experience and for the children's sake and also for the parent, of course. The project will focus on developing family-friendly visitation, so we'll be taking a look at the current visitation area, trying to enhance that. Also, we'll be looking at specific programming that will encourage, better relationships between the fathers and their children, and also developing some training and curriculum. The grant, we hope, will begin on October 1st if we receive it. It's a 3-year grant, and the total is $300,000. So just asking to apply and accept the grant. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner West. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Gamache. Further discussion? Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just commentary. I commented on this at the committee, but I remember when this was first being talked about at the state level advisory board, and I was really shocked to hear in the state of Minnesota, it's one in 6 youth has a parent who's incarcerated, and I believe in Anoka County, it's a 16% rate of children who have a parent incarcerated. So I'm personally really pleased to see this. It really is an upstream measure, preventative, as Cindy was talking about. ACEs, which is the Adverse Childhood Experience, it's been documented that if it's a 3, I believe, out of 10 ACEs, then it starts being a concern for these children who are growing up, and then it gets into a cycle type of situation. So I'm really pleased to see this, Cindy. Good luck in your application, and I hope you receive the full funding for this.
Are there any further comments? We do have a motion and a second before us, and this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Next item.
Okay, we do have a couple more items under public health, and that is just informational items. One is a Minnesota Department of Health dollars that were implemented, $6.9 million state grant, and Anoka County was awarded $306,974 of that. And then also, let's see, we're going to have a little bit more dollars spent on housing those residents with COVID. There's a need for isolation and housing, and these dollars go from $76,500 to $114,000. We do under job training now. Next item, have a couple of action items. Again, Cindy, I think, is going to handle this one.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Our Job Training Center, basically we're requesting to accept funds from the National Health Emergency Dislocated Worker Grant, and this is from DEED. Again, this is a grant that actually we applied for back in 2018, and DEED did follow through with that. It's taken some time, but we're very pleased to accept this award. It will be $360,000 starting this year and going through the end of 2022. The total grant in Minnesota is around $1.3 million that DEED will receive. The other awardees, just for your knowledge, are Duluth, Central Minnesota, Stearns, Benton, and South western Minnesota. So we're very pleased that we are one of the metro counties that was successful in receiving this. The goals of the grant primarily are to address the opioid crisis that has impacted our workforce. And if you think of what's happened over this last year with COVID, our caseloads are rising across really human services in our division related to chemical use, and opioid use is one of those. We will be assisting clients with career exploration, employment, training, and then also on-the-job training. So we will have some funds for all of those different activities. We're going to be servicing 72 dislocated workers, and 12 of those we do need to place within a disaster relief position, such as like our nursing area, call centers, 911, dispatch, and then also in human services. There's quite a few project partners, which I'm really excited about. And so Nicole's area will be working with our human service division. So we have a specialized project in corrections, for an example, in our workhouse, and then also with individuals that are on probation, social service, and then public health nursing. We will also be working with the Lina Health System and our two shelters, Stepping Stones, as well as Hope for Youth. And then last, of course, really a wonderful partner is our Anoka Technical College. They provide a lot of the training for these individuals to make sure that they're going into the right careers that they choose. So just requesting to accept this grant.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Look. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner West. Cindy, I do have one question. It talks an initial funding pass-through of $210,000 for fiscal year 21 and 22. Does that mean the other $150,000 comes in 2023? Is that accurate?
Mr. Chair, what happens is that the pass-through grant first is $210,000, and then we receive the additional amount of money if we spend up to that point to go through 2022.
Okay. Thank you for that. Are there any further questions or comments? Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just comments. Congratulations. You guys worked really hard on this. I'm pleased to see that we were a recipient of this. Obviously, the opioid crisis was a crisis in Anoka County for years, long before COVID, but COVID has definitely exacerbated that. So I'm really happy to see that we're able to help. Thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
That item passes unanimously. On to item 4.
Item 4 is under job training. I believe this is an action item 2. This is approving economic assistance and actions and payments in the amount of $280,204.73. And I would just ask, is there any more presentation on this one?
There isn't, thank you.
Is there an offer of the resolution?
I would offer it.
The resolution 2021 HS4 Economic Assistance Bills has been offered. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Look,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert.
Aye.
And that item passes.
Okay, the rest of the agenda was routine and informational, and that completes my committee report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Reiner. We will now move on to the Information Technology Committee report, and we'll turn to Commissioner Gamache.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The IT Committee met on Tuesday, February 16th, and we had the honor of hosting County Attorney Tony Palumbo. He was with us to give us some information on our first action item. The IT Committee recommends the County Board approve contract C0008431 with Robert Half International, Inc. From Minneapolis in the amount of $120,000 with a change order of $12,000 for a 6-month professional services agreement related to the implementation of the County Attorney's case management system. And obviously, this is a very important system that we are putting into place. The county attorneys managed case management system is basically the lifeblood, a vital lifeblood of the office. My understanding from what Attorney Palumbo indicated that it's been over 16 years since we've updated this system. And that's getting behind times in this day and age, and that the county attorney's office opens a new file every 16 minutes and uses the system to do that. So it shows the importance of it because we don't want them to be slowed down and have any issues. So this is the contract that we have been using with Robert Half over the last, has it been 1 year, Susan?
Mr. Chair, members of the County Board, I'm Susan Vreeland, the Director of Information Technology. To clarify, Commissioner Gamache, we have a short agreement that's just ran the course of a couple of months for this individual. This would be a new contract that requires board approval for an extended period of time.
That's right, thank you. And so obviously we want to make sure we move forward on this for the 6-month period that we're looking at so that we can continue this work on the case management system. Did you want to add anything more on this important case management system?
If I may, Commissioner Gamache, as I mentioned previously, Commissioners, this is a larger an extended contract that needs to come to County Board. And to provide a little background on the purpose of the contract and the need, Commissioners, related to this project, back in 2019, we brought to the County Board a recommendation for a contract to replace the county's case management commission system. And as Commissioner Gamache mentioned, this really is the life's blood of the county's attorney's office as it relates to all of the data and information that they process related to any case, whether it be criminal, civil, and Mr. Palumbo probably has some additional examples of how they use that system. This is a capital project related technology initiative, and in 2019, the contract that this board approved was with Journal Technologies to implement that system, and it was a two-phased approach. The first process that we followed, starting in 2019 and into 2020, was identifying the new needs they have, for example, a system that meets requirements from the state for e-filing and e-charging, certainly something we couldn't anticipate, 16 years ago. The other thing that we needed to do is identify all of the processes that need to come in place with a new system and much more volume. I believe, and Mr. Palumbo may correct me, but I think that they open a new case something like every 15 or 16 minutes. Something to that effect. So certainly an increase in volume. And then there's a number of other processes they needed to see in a new system to manage their cases. So all of that work started in 2019 after board approval and went into 2020. We wanted to take our time. We wanted to do that right. Certainly COVID impacted the timing and the availability of resources both in IT and in the county attorney's office to get that work done. We're winding down that work and we're getting very close to completing what I would call the work plan for phase 2, which is the implementation, really getting this off the ground and getting going. With that, we know that both on the county attorney's side and in IT, we have staff that need to be available to help get this work off the ground, but we can't have them walk away from their day jobs or some of their everyday commitments in order to get this done. And so we did have a resource last year, and this may be what you were referring to, Commissioner Gamache, that came in from the outside to help us with some of that implementation work. That individual has since retired, and so we did do some work last fall to find another resource to come in and help us, some augmentation of services to help us with that implementation. This type of a resource is in very high demand, and we did find an individual towards the end of last year that we looked to bring in to do that work. Before I could even bring her in the door, she was already gone, and another organization had pretty much snapped her up within a day of interviewing her. And we did quite a bit of extensive work to find another resource and continued to have difficulty getting someone in the door before they were kind of taken away by another organization. We did find an individual by the name of Jim Schneider. He's very talented, has worked on implementing a number of state systems, very similar type of technologies to this. We did sign a small contract under which I had authority to do to make sure that he was a fit, not just for IT, but for the office and for the various staff in the county attorney's office that he really needed to work with, meld with well, and we wanted to make sure he could pick up quickly. We didn't have time to get someone up to speed or trained on all of the nuances. They needed to sort of hit the ground running. I feel that Jim has done a good job doing that. I think that he's in for the long haul as it relates to the project and has already brought a lot to the table. And so the action before you today is a recommendation for a 6-month contract to have him a part of getting the key pieces of the implementation going and to allow for us to continue, one, for the staff involved to do the pieces of their work they have to do unrelated to this project, but to make them available as they can to implement this and get it going, because we know we need to retire the system in place soon. And we're working on the timeline for that while we get this new system going, up and going at the same time for the benefit of the office. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to that, the project or the contract. So with that, I'll leave it to the board.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Susan.
Susan.
Thank you, Susan, and I'll move this.
There is a motion before us. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Reinert. Any further comments or questions for Susan? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
That item passes.
The next item on the agenda is informational. It was the IT committee considered a review of the IT annual report, which, by the way, as well know, under the pandemic and COVID-19, it has been a very, very busy year for IT, everything from getting computers out to people's homes, laptops out to people's homes so they can work remotely. Then all of the other things that we did with virtual rooms, both in the courts, the workhouse, juvenile facility, also some of the work that we've done here with scheduling for the public, everything from our license centers and just some of the other work that they've gone on and done, and they've done so well and so quickly. We really thank them for a lot of the hard work that got put in during the last, during 2020. So we're looking forward to another busy year in IT. We don't expect that to slow down at all, but I want to thank the staff and everyone involved for all the hard work they put in 2020 to get us through the 2020 season, the year, and all of what we needed to do. So thank you, Susan, to everybody, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Gamache. Thank you, Susan. And we'll move on to the Public Safety Committee Vice Chair report. I have 2 items for you. In the Sheriff's Office, I would recommend approval and execution of a contract for fiscal year 2020 DNA Capacity Enhancement for Backlog Reduction Program Grant with the Office of Justice Programs in the amount of $106,783 and a term of October 1st, 2020 to September 30th of 2022. Is there a motion to approve the contract?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner West. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gamache. Is there further comments? Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just had one question about this, and I think it's just a factual statement. I mean, we did not get the full ask, right? So it was $163,465,000, but we got less than that. But that doesn't affect any of the actual work or the function of this. It's just stating like we got less than what we asked for. That's my question.
I'm going to ask the sheriff to come up and respond to that, but I think the answer is we will continue to reduce the backlog at every opportunity. And the more money we get, the more we can reduce the backlog, providing we have enough manpower. But I will now turn, human power. So now I will turn to the sheriff and let him comment.
Well said, thank you. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you. And you're absolutely right. The amount requested was in fact 163 plus, and we ended up with 106 plus. That'll run us through September 2022. At the start of 2022, I think, is when our advisory board, consisting of members of Anoka, Sherburne, and Wright counties, will need to discuss what the desired direction would be. The quickest and easiest solution at this point, we do have reserve balances within the laboratory, and I think that would be a quick and easy way to close that out, and expecting that this grant will renew again October 2022. So I think we'll likely see a very small gap in coverage, if at all, And unfortunately, at this point in time, we don't really know what that next grant process is going to look like, but this will meet our needs, again, through September 2022 with the renewal in October. And this has been a long-standing grant that we have in place, I guess not that long in the grand scheme, but it's been a multiple renewal grant in order to, again, cut back on the backlog with our DNA cases. It's been very helpful.
Thank you, Sheriff Stewart. Any further comments?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so just follow up. And then, I'm sorry, James, so then you're saying then too, even if the grant isn't happening in perfect timing, that you have a reserve that you could use to supplement the need of the specific DNA backlog?
Correct, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Meisner, that's exactly right. Again, it would be up to the advisory board if that's how they wanted to allocate those funds and to maintain that position, but that is an option.
Okay, perfect. And is this also dedicated towards the work too, I want to say, of past sexual assault kits?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Meisner, that's actually a different grant. We have the SAKI grant for Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, and we do have resources being attached to that as well. There's probably some overlap, but for the most part, that is a separate grant.
No, thank you for that clarification. Yes, it is SAKI. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. We have a motion and a second before us. Seeing no further discussion, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
That item passes. Next, as the vice chair of the committee, I recommend adoption of a resolution accepting a dedicated donation from Federal Premium Ammunition. Is there an offer of the resolution?
I'll offer it.
Commissioner Look has offered the resolution. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Look.
Mr. Chair, under normal circumstances, this would be a donation, but under today's circumstances where they can't even keep this on the shelf, it is quite a donation. So it's very thankful for their partnership and, of course, a great company to have in our community. And anytime I take a tour over there, I'm left with this huge patriotic feeling. They're just fantastic organizations. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Look. Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is just commentary. This is something that I would normally not even think about. But obviously, it's a very pragmatic, useful donation for our Sheriff's Department office. Excuse me.
Thank you, Commissioner Meisner. I will just comment that the donation is 283 cases of 9mm blanks, 487 cases of 5.56 simunitions, 69 cases of 9mm simunitions, and box of simunition rifle bolts to convert live rifles into simulation firing rifles. I will say it's the first time I've seen the term simunitions. I assume that's simulated ammunitions contraction. I'm going to turn to the sheriff. He's here. He may have a comment for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, as Commissioner Look said, Federal Premium and Vista Outdoors has been an outstanding partner, not just for Anoka County, but on a more specific scale with the Sheriff's Office. They've been great resources, great partners for us. We certainly, as you can see, appreciate that partnership. The donation that they've made from our standpoint is literally priceless. As is said, you can't get this type of this. The majority of this is training, I guess, to clarify that as well. Simunition is like it can be fired through our traditional weapon, so it makes the training much more realistic, but it's a wax round that comes out. So it marks, it does hurt, it'll leave a welt, so it'll get your attention to take your training very seriously. But it also, this degree that you can see, there's literally hundreds of cases being donated. This will have a regional impact. And so my direction to our training unit was figure out what kind of regional training that we can host for law enforcement in order to make good use of what they've offered to us. And so I just wanted to publicly say thank you very much to Federal, and I know we all appreciate their partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. We do have a resolution before us. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Look,
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. That does conclude my Vice Chair's report for Public Safety Committee, and we will now move back to our regular agenda, and we'll move to items 8A through C. A and B are action items. C is for informational purposes. Item 8A is to consider reappointing Jerry Peterson to the Anoka County Community Action Program, or ACAP, representing the public sector for a 3-year term expiring March of 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Gamache. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Reinert. Is there further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Abstain.
And we have one abstention in Commissioner West. Next, item 8B, consider appointing Belinda Lawrence to the Library Board for a term expiring December 31st of 2021, representing District 5, as recommended by Commissioner Gamache due to the resignation of Janice Martineau Dunlap. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Gamache. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Commissioner West. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Gamache.
Thank you. In speaking with Ms. Lawrence, we had a good conversation and just wanted to point out she's retired, after 25 years of teaching elementary school. She's retired and went back to receive her master's degree. And one of the things that she's working on now is with youth in our community. And but one of the things we discussed back and forth was while she was working on her master's degree, she used the Anoka County libraries to help in studying and finding resources and things like that. So she really wants to be a part of that organization and to help out as much as she possibly can. So I'm looking forward to having her join the library board.
Thank you, Commissioner Gamache. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And that item passes. And then lastly, for informational purposes, is my appointment of the private sector appointment of Debbie Boyd from the John Roberts Company to the Anoka County Workforce Development Board, replacing Michael Thews for a term expiring June 30th, 2023. I would like to thank Michael Thews for his work on the Workforce Development Board. He was a great contributor. John Roberts is a fairly large employer in Coon Rapids, part of Anoka County, and I'm glad to see they've put forward Debbie Boyd as a replacement for Michael Thews. With that, is there anything else to come before the county board? Commissioner Look.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to give a shout out to our law enforcement concerning this, top of the news the last couple of days, the carjacking that occurred in Blaine ended up in Cambridge, and it was actually a friend of mine whose vehicle was carjacked. He had a 9-year-old daughter in there, and it was quite an event for both of them. And somebody I recall on Facebook was saying, well, does anyone know what these sirens are heading up 65? You know, they're trying to figure out what's going on, and I reassured them that our law enforcement doesn't mess around. And in fact, they didn't. They dealt with this swiftly. Unfortunately, there was the Officer K-9 that was shot in the process, Bravo, who is doing quite well in terms of recovery. And so we're thankful for that. But I just want to give a shout out to the law enforcement that as these times are somewhat uncertain that we're looking at, as carjackings seem to be on the rise and everything else that seems to be going on, we do back our blue, and we support their work, and we're very thankful for their quick response in these situations. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Luck. And it does, it causes me to reflect on where we're headed and what hope is on the horizon. We need to be hopeful. We need to look forward to what can be, not what feels like is inevitable. I mean, the carjackings, as you say, are skyrocketing all across the state. We need to, in Anoka County particularly, but we need to project it across the region, that there is hope, that this is going to turn around, that we're going to get through the COVID environment, that we're going to come back together as a reasonable society, treat each other with respect, and move forward the way we should. Because Anoka County is made up of a lot of really good people, and we need to lead that charge. We need to make sure the public knows we're optimistic. We believe we can do this, and we can do it right. So with that, if there's nothing else to come before the board, we will adjourn on a high note. Thank you, Commissioner Luck.